dance class. Now I'll take a quick scoot back from 1980 to 1971. The dang cartwheel kept me from making the cheerleading squad, so my compassionate mom enrolled me in dance class, and that's how I met him the first time. Our dancing instructor dragged us girls all over the place to perform, including to the Waldorf Astoria in New York City and with the USO for men just drafted into the Vietnam War. That's how I met and developed an incredibly huge crush on Frank Jacobs, the hysterically funny, very cute 17-year-old high school senior who was our stage lighting designer. For many months, the wheels in my brain churned, trying to figure out a way to date this guy. One special day, my 8th grade class got to visit Frank's ginormous high school. All I could think of was maybe I'd see him. I finagled a way to sit with him at lunch with our mutual friends. Like during dance performances, Frank was the life of the party. He was the guy who started the cafeteria food fights. My heart was on fire. But when the big day ended, I thought, so did my chance with Frank Jacobs. But I got another chance. I was with a group of Frank's friends as we all piled into the 2 cars that were going to be racing around narrow, windy back roads without using headlights. As I ponder the recklessness of our youth, I wonder how any of us survived. Turned out, though, Frank was the driver of the other car, so we still didn't get to connect. I continued scheming ways to get this guy. Maybe Frank didn't want to date me, but the keyboard player did. He invited me to his high school senior prom. Now, this was a huge deal for an 8th grader. In my conniving mind, surely Frank, also a high school senior, would be there, and we would sit near him. Back in those days, we did the whole hairdresser and long formal gown thing. I still remember the sweet, spicy scent of carnations on my wrist. Only one problem. Who knew Frank Jacobs was too shy to ask any girl to his prom? Bummer. He wasn't there. But worse, now it was assumed that I was this guy's girlfriend. Frank would not betray his friend. I remained fixated on Frank. Sick as it sounds, I made prank phone calls to his house every few days, hoping to hear his voice. But he never answered the phone. He was always at work. His family still remembers those calls. Let's make a random visit to Frank's house, I convinced the keyboard player. But Frank wasn't home. Again, he was at work. One day, when I knew the keyboard player had to leave early from a particular band practice, I showed up and faked not having a ride home. I manipulated a way to get a ride home with Frank, the late guy. When we arrived at my house, I asked him if he'd like to come in and meet my parents. Surely he'd become my boyfriend after that formal greeting. He said he couldn't meet them. He had to get home. Much later, he explained he had to use the bathroom. Finally, feeling rejected, I gave up on dating Frank Jacobs, at least for the time being. How shameful to use that keyboard player as such a tool to get Frank. A good ending for him, though, as he wound up happily married to my uncle's sister-in-law. Well, 2 short months after giving up on Frank, I met the guy I would divorce in 1980. God had honored my decision not to lie for my boss at the record label. I loved my new job at the hospital, but my heart's desire was to leave the comforts of the USA and serve as a missionary in a foreign land. With unstoppable faith, I applied to 50 mission organizations and Bible college. Back in 1980, it felt like a wet blanket was thrown over my zeal to receive rejection letters because I had been divorced. Oh, goodness. I had no choice but to wait on God for his plan. It seemed murdering my husband would have been a forgivable offense, but apparently divorce was not. Going back to that man I just divorced was not an option. He was still with the cookie baker. He didn't want children, and most significantly, he didn't want anything to do with my new faith. I never saw him again. I heard about his death 40 years later. I know God hates divorce, but I was already divorced before I knew or even cared about that. Love of my life. While I waited for God to fill my heart's desire to be a missionary, I got the opportunity to return to the record label business. Besides being a Christian record label, this was an exciting concert and festival ministry where Woodstock seemed to come back to life. Although it was a lot of fun, loneliness was a black hole that seemed to swallow me alive at times. I wrote a detailed list of what I wanted in a man and began to pray for him. He should be tall, extremely intelligent, hardworking, loving, compassionate, handsome, love kids, love me, love God, and many other things with much detail. Even that he wouldn't snore. I decided this man, when I met him, would accompany me to the mission field in a foreign land. I felt nudged to go back to my childhood church where I had knelt and prayed to keep my house. And there I became a Sunday school teacher. Late 1981, a long-haired, tall, good-looking, extremely intelligent man stood before me at this church, the one and the only Frank Jacobs. 10 years after I gave up on dating him, I finally got another chance. Not a churchgoer, Frank was there to show support for his infant niece's baptism. And now he was a singer for a popular rock band playing for large audiences in big nightclubs. He was also the manager of a liquor store down the street from where I worked. I prayed for Frank. Then I showed up where he worked and invited him to lunch. Then he asked me to dinner. I shared my faith. And we only dated a few weeks when he said he'd buy the whole farm. Being in church is not the same as having a personal relationship with the Lord, which Frank didn't yet have. Frank committed his heart and his life to Jesus Christ, and he bought the whole farm. 6 months later, I got to marry the most amazing man alive. I expected God would send Frank and me to some foreign country pretty much the next day. To the T, he was the man on my list, except for the snoring, but earplugs would work fine. Chapter 3, The Call. 2 weeks after our wedding, in 1982, Dr. Anthony Campolo spoke truth to a crowd of about 30,000 people at the festival where I worked, while Frank and I sat backstage watching. His words pierced our hearts. Thousands of children in Haiti will go to bed hungry tonight, and you don't give a shit. In fact, do you care more that I just said shit than about all those hungry kids? You could hear a pin dropped. We knew then we had to do something to help those poor kids in Haiti. We both had French in high school. That's all we needed, right? I thought right then we'd start packing our bags and go to the poor nation in the Caribbean, Haiti. It would take much longer, though. We bought a nice home only 4 months after we were married, and Frank's new sales position gave him no established customers, no salary, commission only. The hard-working guy who was never home as a teenager because he was always working was working very hard, opening many new accounts. But it takes years to build a territory, and we needed to pay our mortgage. Over the next 5 years, we birthed 3 beautiful blessings. The first was by a cesarean section, and the next 2 were fully natural, and they were all born on Saturday. Motherhood was an enormous blessing, and Haiti would wait. It didn't make sense, but I listened when God led me to leave my job to stay at home with my babies, never putting them into daycare. Many women have put their kids in daycare and served God exactly as He had led them. Everyone's journey is unique. Well, Frank's commission fell drastically short of our basic living expenses. The math didn't add up. Yet miraculously, every bill always got paid, and on time. We learned some very valuable lessons in frugality, and most importantly, we learned compassion for the poor. We were the only parents in the world, it seemed, who used cloth diapers, rinsing them in the toilet, soaking them in a pail of bleach and water, then to the washing machine. Our kids always had nice clothes, thank God for older cousins. We had nice secondhand furniture, and all of our needs were always met. One day I went to the store to buy milk. We wanted bread too, but we would skip it that day. As I opened the car door, the exact amount of money I needed for bread was sitting next to my car. I prayed a bit boldly one day that God would do a miracle by a specific date to change Frank's employment situation. We got a random phone call from a neighbor who we'd never met, who'd seen Frank's van in our driveway with a competitor company, and he offered Frank a salaried job plus commission and an established territory. From then on, our financial situation began to improve. I was so incredibly blessed being mom to our three amazing kids, but as they were growing up, I could never forget about those poor kids in Haiti. Even if I could, I would be gently, supernaturally reminded. One day I had been dreamily wondering what life would be like in Haiti when our 4-year-old son shoved the words, "Made in Haiti," in my face on a baseball he had found in our yard. I thought Haiti didn't have many exports, so this must be a reminder that God was calling us there to help there one day. I pondered how and when it would happen. One day, driving the kids somewhere, my mind was wandering about how desperate conditions must be for Haitians to navigate a small wooden boat across the wild ocean, attempting to reach the United States. My thoughts were interrupted by some loud chatter on the radio. I wonder if maybe that's what it sounded like on one of those rickety boats. Next, I heard the radio announcer say, "Those are sounds of Haiti." I was turned to a Christian radio station, but it was an odd coincidence to think of human suffering in Haiti than actually to hear it on the radio. Another nudge happened. Driving our kids home from school one day, I was listening to Christian radio again when the song that was playing abruptly stopped. Unaware how strange this was, I was only half listening. Someone on the radio seemed to break into the song and said, "It's about the size of Maryland." Now, on the back of the window of my new but very used car, was a map of Maryland. I had glanced back in my rear view mirror at this map of Maryland, and because I looked in the rear view mirror, it was flipped backwards, then forwards. Then this guy gave some population numbers and some other random facts. Finally, my ears perked up and I heard him say, "I'm talking about Haiti." Soon after that, mysteriously, the song that had been playing before the interruption started, it began playing again. Now, I believed that that was a supernatural event and that God had gotten my attention. Excitement about living as a missionary family in Haiti exponentially intensified at the realization that the God of the universe was gently nudging me and reminding me of his call. Frank's first trip to Haiti. It seemed like time was dragging its feet. After all, 7 long years had passed since that call for us to help those hungry babies. I couldn't wait for Frank to return home after his first week-long trip to Haiti. Surely he'd agree now, after having seen Haiti for himself, that it was time for us to move there to serve as missionaries with our 1-year-old, 4-year-old, and 6-year-old children. But when he got home, he announced, "We can't take the kids." Those 5 words made me shudder, echoing through me for years. My heart sank, and it wanted to stop beating. My world shattered. My hopes and dreams were crushed. Frank's heart was indeed broken for Haiti, but his duty as a husband and a father prevailed. It was many years before I could accept, like Isaiah 55:8 says, that God's ways are often different than I think they should be. Tears would soak my pillow for nights. Frank's return from the trip of tropical weather to an unusual New Jersey snowstorm. He had purchased a video camera to capture Haiti, a monumental financial sacrifice to us, with an enormous sized camera as well. What an added blessing to videotape our kids sledding and enjoying the snow. I'm reminded of Matthew 6:33 that if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all these things, including watching your kids years later sled down a little hill, those things shall be added unto you. Well, now Thanksgiving didn't exist without a turkey dinner back in those days, yet turkey seemed like a selfish extravagance to Frank because of the poverty that he'd witnessed in Haiti. So we almost didn't have a turkey after Frank's first trip in November that year. My first trip to Haiti. 2 years later, when our youngest was only 3, I took my first one-week mission trip to Haiti. If God wasn't clearly directing me to do this, I'd question the wisdom of leaving her at such a young age. My trip was life-changing. I felt like I was the little boy in the starfish story walking along the beach. The tide had brought hundreds of starfish onto the shore, and as he looked at them, he was overwhelmed with compassion. In a few hours, without intervention, the little boy knew all the starfish would bake in the sun and die. What could he do? How could he help? The little boy picked up a starfish and threw it back in the sea. Then he picked up another and threw it back into the sea. Then another and another, over and over. A wise old man passed him, seeing what he was doing, and he said, "Look, do you see all these starfish? You can't possibly make a difference. There are so many starfish on this beach." But the little boy answered the old man, never taking his eyes off the starfish as he tossed it back into the sea. And he said, "I just made a difference for that one." Well, I saw firsthand that Haiti has so much desperate, overwhelming need. Where does one begin to help? I decided to be like the little boy on the beach, helping one Haitian at a time. I carried a burden before this, but now it exponentially intensified. My burden felt like the size of that beach, with the starfish, maybe even as big as the ocean. I lived and breathed Haiti from that moment, and from the moment that I went on that trip. Now, I shared a similar response as Frank and Thanksgiving turkey after my first exposure to Haiti's poverty in 1991. Decorating our family Christmas tree in early November was normally an exciting event. However, I decided this year there would be no Christmas tree. Selflessly, neither the kids nor Frank objected or tried to change my mind. Well, apparently God cares about silly little traditions that are important in our lives. On Christmas Eve, I had just left the grocery store. The cashier had just rung up my order, and seeing the cost, I changed my mind about a $4 purchase. Instead of issuing a credit on my card, she gave me cash. I didn't usually have any cash, but on that day, with the $1 that I already had in my purse, now I had $5. The kids and I were driving home with our groceries, and the gas station on the corner had leftover Christmas trees for only $5. So into the back of the car, I tossed a beautifully powerfully fragrant Christmas tree. We decorated it, and to this day, by far, that was the most beautiful, most special, and best-smelling Christmas tree we have ever had. Audible voice. A few years later, I had a dream. I'm asking the Lord, "How long before I'm serving you in Haiti, Lord?" His 2-word audible answer filled me with holy reverential fear. 16 years. I later learned that what he meant was that was from the date that we were first called in Haiti. So taking God at his word, when that date arrived, exactly 16 years after that first call, Like Charlie Brown in the pumpkin patch, I was watching for something to happen. Anything. But nothing did. I scratched my head, not understanding. Intent on my expectation that we would move to Haiti, I had not made the correct connection until much later. It was in that month that we paid off our house. We became debt free, and we also pioneered Hope Alive Clinic Ministries Incorporated. Now, all those lessons in frugality and many of God's blessings paid off. While not physically serving in Haiti, we had no idea how challenging, how big, and how successful for the kingdom of God that this ministry would become. I can't say that I accepted this, but it began to sort of materialize somehow that maybe God had a different plan and a better plan than what I had expected. His ways may not be our ways, but his ways are always perfect. God incredibly blessed the ministry of Hope Alive.